Welcome aboard to this episode, this very early episode. George, I hope you got your coffee and your OJ, brother. We are doing a very early live stream today. We're gonna talk about downtown Disney. There's some news over there, over in Anaheim, and we're also gonna be taking your questions. We only have about an hour today. Just want to give everyone a heads up. We do have a hard out. We have 1 hour today, so we're gonna get through as many questions as we possibly can. But sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Welcome aboard, everybody, to this live show, very early edition. I got my Disney 100 coffee mug, because I'm a shill, right, George?
Sticking on brand.
You know what I'm saying? George, if you let everybody home know where they can find you on social media, sir.
Absolutely. You can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Disney George. You could also find me on Instagram under the Disney Italiano. And of course, you can find me right here on my home base at Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner, with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info. And I'm so glad that we're actually doing our very first OG55 live in the AM.
We're doing an AM live stream. So what we're gonna do first, we're gonna talk about this downtown Disney news, and then we're gonna hit your questions. Now we might not, apologies in advance, we might not get to every single question. Like I said, we only have an hour today. We have a hard out, so we'll try our best to get to as many as we possibly can. But we'll have another live show very soon. This is from our friends over at CapTheMagic. Mr. Daps is amazing, a friend of the channel. This is quite interesting. New entrance open at the downtown Disney district. So it says here that CapTheMagic team member Steven was visiting the Disneyland Resort on Friday morning and discovered the new entrance was open. It has a wonderful new feel and is very welcoming to walk up. There is a new mural and restroom, just inside. Work also continues to move forward and progress made on Ding Tai Fung as well. This looks really good, you guys. I'm going to kind of go through some of these, but this has a very mid-century, very clean. This is like the security checkpoint, a vast improvement from the checkpoints that we currently have. George, what are your overall thoughts on the new security checkpoint, or one of the new checkpoints for downtown Disney?
I think it looks great. I think it's a positive step to a lot of revitalizing the smaller details of the resort that a lot of people don't necessarily focus on, but now we actually can, because I think the improvement is definitely better than what we had. And I feel like this is going to be the stepping stone moving forward with all the security checkpoints. And hopefully, and as we did a show with our good friend Danny from Just Ask Danny and Five Fires, that hopefully like the Esplanade will get a lot of love as well. So this is going into the point of the right direction. I think that'll work very well, especially with Disneyland Forward on the horizon.
Yeah, and I like the idea of downtown Disney kind of going in this mid-century direction. I think it's very appropriate for Disneyland Resort because our resort was birthed in 1955, right? Mm-hmm. So to have this sort of mid-century aesthetic just seems appropriate out here in California. You know what I'm saying? I really dig it. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we're going to get this same style throughout these security checkpoints. The one over there by the bus load unload area, they're going to have to address that because with Eastern Gateway coming, that's going to have to all be reconfigured. So we'll probably get a similar design. Hopefully they stick with this design. Hopefully. I think they will, though. Do you think they're going to keep the mid-century all the way through, George?
I hope they do. I hope that this was kind of like a little Easter egg teaser nod to say, you know, this is going to be the full-on kind of vibe that we're giving the resort. I think it fits very well. That I love that turn of the century kind of feel to it. That was always Walt. To me, that was more Walt than anything, because he always had one foot in the past and one in the future. So when you kind of mesh that together, I think it's a very harmonious blend of what Disneyland represents. And I feel like we kind of have to get out of those kind of that unfortunate, as much as I love the 80s and the 90s, I feel like we got to get rid of the overall aesthetics of like how Disneyland currently looks into the newer vibe.
Well, yeah, in mid-century is very timeless. I mean, it's funny because it's technically it's dated. It's mid-century, you know what I'm saying? But it holds up very, very well.
Yes.
You know, I mean, look at this old sign from downtown Disney. This is how it looked when it opened, you know, and the signage looks very, like you were saying, George, very 1990s, very, very early 2000s. You know, it's very, very dated and not in a good way. Mid-century, people still love the old school 1960s version of Tomorrowland at Disneyland. Still their favorite version of Tomorrowland. You know, it was that same kind of like that mid-century style. So it's a smart move. It's a more timeless move to go with that in that direction. We're also getting, in addition to a beautiful new security checkpoint right here with awesome lighting, by the way. I love those like ring lights above. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
We're also getting some new restrooms. So there's gonna be additional restrooms being added here too as well. Very cool. I know that's a little thing, but you know, it matters. Absolutely.
And again, I have to point this out. And again, I could be wrong. I could be very wrong. I could be eating crow, you know, as time goes on. But I just feel like, again and again, these signs are pinpointing to the fact that the Toy Story parking lot is going to be something utilized other than a West Coast version of Disney Springs, because that is something that if they were eventually going to turn into, why would they throw all their time and money invested into downtown Disney and kind of like putting like all this stuff together for it, adding new restaurants, adding new restrooms, adding a new entranceway? Why do all that if you're just going to give us a bigger shopping dining complex in the coming years?
Yeah, no, it's not going to be. I'm telling you, Toy Story lot is not going to become more shopping and dining. And again, we could eat crow, dude. We speculate here, you know what I'm saying? But in my opinion, an educated guesstimate, it would not make a whole lot of sense. The reason why Disney didn't show a third park in that spot for the Disneyland Forward artwork is because they didn't want to scare the residents and the city before the vote. If they would have acknowledged they're even thinking about a third park in the Toy Story lot, it would have opened a huge can of worms. Look at all the drama from the residents at that council meeting that came up person after person about the Magic Way being bought by Disney. That little street, all the drama that caused. Could you imagine if they hinted at a third park, what the residents would say about that? They didn't want to mess up the chance of this thing not getting approved. It will be a third park. I'm very sure of it, but again, we could be wrong. But in my opinion, it just makes the most sense. And a new park is what's gonna bring you more hotel occupancy and also justify maybe even a brand new hotel as well. You're not going to be able to make that justification for a new hotel based on a new mall. Okay, brick and mortar, as Hey Bricky has said in his video, and I agree with him 1000%. Brick and mortar is not exactly super hot right now. Not to say that certain things aren't successful. Okay, there are brick and mortar businesses that still do well, but for the most part, brick and mortar is on the decline. We live in a new world now with Amazon and things like that, online retailers, and brick and mortar just isn't the business it once was. Now, I also do want to say one thing here. I can't zoom in, unfortunately, but right here where my arrow is, you can kind of see me circling. In that mural, that sign right there, you know what it says, George?
What does it say?
Portos. Portos. Okay, it says Portos. Now look, that's not a definitive thing. Maybe they drew up this artwork before it was canceled, but we just did a video recently about Portos. Yes. ABC7, which is a local ABC network here in Los Angeles. ABC7, owned by the Walt Disney Company, just like a week ago, stated on that network that Portos is coming to downtown Disney in 18 months. So not only did they say it was coming, they gave you a timeline. So there are a lot of rumors that this thing isn't coming. According to Disney-owned ABC, it's coming in 18 months. So it was pretty specific. So anyway, overall thoughts, George, before we move on to questions?
No, I think we're good. As I said, I love the direction that Disney is going. I think this is a great starting point of the overall kind of architectural aesthetics that they're going for with the resort, and I hope that is the case. I hope they just don't stop here with this entrance to downtown Disney and the restrooms, because I agree with you. I dig the turn of the century kind of vibe and style. It kind of screams to the notion of who Walt was and what he believed in and everything. It was part of Disney history, and what better way to bring that back to pay tribute than to the OG Disney park itself. So
Yeah.
I'm very happy for it.
Yeah, well said. No, it looks great. It looks absolutely great. I think this whole downtown Disney area, including the Esplanade and that area towards the bus load area, is going to look really snazzy. I know they haven't technically announced any changes to the Esplanade, but we talked about it with Danny from Five Fires, and it's almost a certainty, I think, because you kind of have to update the Esplanade if you're going to be doing all these changes. All these infrastructure changes with the new security checks and all that. With that almost comes a necessity to sort of update the Esplanade, because a lot of those things butt up against the Esplanade, right? So I think it's going to look really snazzy. Absolutely. All right, let's get to our very first. Oh, go ahead.
Really quick before we get into the questions, I just have to say, because the comment is down here in the bottom for this is coming from Matterhorn Mania. Woke up to Tiana's Bayou Adventure drop today. Yes, we actually did too. We actually got to watch the POV coming from Disney parks. We were going to incorporate it here in the live, but we were cutting for time, and we want to give our full in-depth thoughts and opinions and actually do the ride through. So we are planning on doing a separate video. So definitely check that out in the near future. I just wanted to just throw that in there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We are going to do a separate video on that, breaking it down, getting real in the nitty gritty with that. We're going to go scene by scene and really talk about it. So absolutely. Yeah, like George was saying, that we were going to do it today, but we only have an hour today to do the live. So, I figured, let's give it the proper OG55 breakdown and really let it breathe. So, well, you should see that probably this weekend sometime. Mr. BJ Vincent here says, hey, OG and George, do you feel it would be better if Josh was picked to be CEO? He should partner with someone else to be COO, Chief Operating Officer, similar to Eisner and Wells partnership, or does it matter? Oh, it matters, BJ. I think it matters a whole lot. I am not, and again, nothing against Josh as a person. I think he seems like a really nice guy. I would love to sit down and have a beer with the guy. Like, he's one of those kind of people. Like, he's very charming, very charismatic. He's a people person. He's great. But in terms of how he's run the parks, I haven't been impressed so far. And that's just my opinion, right? I would be honestly a little worried if he was the CEO and there wasn't someone in there to sort of offset him. So if they do decide to have Josh Giamaro as CEO, I hope that maybe Disney reinstates the president role, and puts someone else in there, maybe like a Tom Staggs, a Dana Walden, or somebody else to kind of complement Josh, And Josh, here's the other thing too. The parks are kind of a steady business, okay? There hasn't been a whole lot of seismic change in the theme park industry, so to speak, like big changes. Not like what we've seen in the studio. The studio has seen massive changes with streaming. Theaters are kind of on the struggle bus right now. There's a lot of changes happening on the studio side, and I don't feel 100% confident and comfortable with a guy who has no studio experience running the company right now in such a transitionary time, not just for Disney, but for the industry in general. So I would need a co-CEO, a president, somebody in there that has studio experience, like a Dana Walden or somebody else, to offset to offset Josh a little bit, because I'm sorry, I just don't feel like he's ready for that. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. What do you think, George?
Yeah, I truly, I don't feel like he's ready for prime time. I feel that, even though he has made positive strides moving forward, we're starting to see that with the parks. Hopefully that we'll get an even bigger viewpoint of that at D23. I think as a whole, because the Walt Disney Company is so huge, and for someone like Josh that is just getting up on his feet as chairman of Parks and Experiences, I don't think to push him into something literally picking him up, just getting his feet wet with a pond, and then throwing him into the ocean where all the sharks are. I don't see how that is going to help the company. It would feel like another Chapek era to me. I'm sorry.
No, it would feel like Chapek. The only advantage that Josh has over Chapek is that Josh knows how to smooth Hollywood. He will be able to get in there and do the brunch with Meryl Streep thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
For sure. He'll fit right into that.
But if they added someone else in there with him where he can be the creative and let him use his creative tools, and then you have someone that runs the business side and the numbers and can possibly guide him and know how to handle on the studio side and everything, I think that would work out well.
No, it would work out much better. So like on a personal level, he'll be fine, but on the meat and potatoes, as George says, that's where I'm worried, because there's a lot of studio challenges right now, and you're going to put a parks guy in there. The parks are a stable business, right now. You don't really need a whole lot. I don't know, man. Like, the studio is what really needs the attention. I know a lot of park fans don't want to hear that, okay? But Disney is a studio first. And if you don't believe me, you can take it up with Roy Disney, the nephew.
The real heartbeat of this company was, is, and will always be the film business.
Film business. It's a studio first. You need someone in there that knows the studio now more than ever, like I said, because the studio is going through major changes. Hollywood in general is. So great question, BJ Vincent. But yes, to answer in short, it matters, and it matters a whole lot. BJ Vincent again with another question. Wow, I love his enthusiasm. This is awesome. Number one, part 1 of 2. I was curious. I read that the Walt Disney World Tower of Terror was the only one that allows the car to roam the floors. It exited the elevator shaft, while the other versions do not exactly. I thought they all did. But that being said, do you feel that is why the Disney company is hesitant about using it for the canceled missing third attraction at Avengers Campus? I'm confused about the Avengers Campus element of it. Hold on. He's got one more. Where a ride goes from one ride system to another. Once they perfect it, then maybe they could do it. What are your thoughts? Do they have issues?
So I think if you're referring to when the Tower of Terror transitioned into Mission Breakout, BJ, the initial Tower of Terror didn't have the fourth dimension, so to speak, from Walt Disney World. That's what always set aside Walt Disney World from the other ones. As far as the international parks go, I don't think they had it either. I think it was Walt Disney World that only had it, but I don't think that really has any correlation to the third attraction added to Avengers Campus, because they would then have to readjust the whole building for Mission Breakout. They just basically utilized what they had.
Right. You'd have to build a whole new structure.
Exactly, because the Tower of Terror never had. I think that's what you're referring to.
Well, and he's also kind of getting into, like, he's talking also about the ride system where you go from one mechanism to another. And there were rumors with the Avengers e-ticket that we were going to do that. Remember, we did that whole video with Jay Shear about that?
Right.
So he was saying, like, because maybe Disney World's Tower of Terror had issues with that scene. I'm not familiar with that, but maybe they've had issues with it. Maybe that's why they're hesitant to add something similar with the Avengers and add multiple.
I mean, they may have had some like normal, regular shutdowns with it, but I've never heard where it was like a constant shutdown operational problem.
Yeah.
I think, me personally, I don't really think it has anything to do with it. I think with the third Avengers e-ticket has a lot more to do with it was at a time where the company started going through the shambles with, the changes of the CEO, with what was going on with the world, the shutdown, the pandemic and everything. And I just feel like it kind of got the brunt of it, to be honest with you. And I feel like that they just kind of, it got shelved. It got, I thought it was going to be canceled. It got greenlit again. So many changes. And I feel like that was more of the issue than anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And I heard the original ride system with the Quinjet and then the rocket packs and all that stuff, BJ, I heard a big issue with Disney they went to Imagineering and they said, you got to up the capacity on this thing. And the capacity the capacity was not meeting the standard. So that was another element here. So between the capacity issues that we were hearing, the pandemic, the MCU kind of struggling after the pandemic, even kind of during the pandemic. So like there was a lot of elements here at play that really, I think, delayed it more than anything else. But great question, though, BJ.
Yeah,
BJ here continues. After seeing the new Peter Pan ride at Fantasy Springs, it looks like the boat ride systems has a motion base to create the illusion of soaring through the air, a turntable, and a track system. He said, do you think this may be a good choice for a Moana dark ride and or upgraded Haunted Mansion ride? Oh,
no, that's interesting.
Yeah, upgraded Haunted Mansion ride. Now, I'm intrigued by that. Fans would not. See, this is the thing. Fans get very mentally married and stuff to like the nostalgia. And you go into Haunted Mansion and you start changing the infamous Doom buggy stuff. You're gonna have some problems.
Say this, BJ, you actually kind of brought on an interesting topic that they may not utilize it for the Haunted Mansion, but they may utilize it for that Encanto ride coming into Animal Kingdom.
They may. I kind of hope they don't. Not that ride system isn't good, because I think there's a lot of properties you can do it with, and I think Moana is even one of them, maybe. But my issue, my ideal for the Encanto house would be Mystic Manor technology, where you go through the house in that trackless vehicle. I think you go the Mystic Manor route for that ride. I don't know. It could work technically with the Peter Pan, but ideally, I think Mystic Manor is the way to go.
Was the Peter Pan ride system still trackless, but it just had that motion?
Oh, that's a good question, actually. I think it is. I got to check on that. I'm not really sure. It probably is trackless, but it's basically the Transformers and Spider-Man technology in a nutshell. Right. Is basically what it is. You know.
Now, with Moana, I would say I would prefer to have the Pirates Shanghai version for Walt Disney World, being that would more so is what we're looking at for Pandora for Disneyland, because I feel that kind of ride system would be a better quality because of the scope of Moana, and especially because it involves yet again with water, and how Pandora is going to be based off of possibly the Way of Water. Pirates is water, so it's like it all kind of fits in. They all have their, Walt Disney would have Moana, Disneyland would have Avatar, and then Shanghai would have Pirates.
Yeah, and with Moana, I think I'd want real water, because if you do the Peter Pan thing, it's going to be a bunch of screen-based water, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that, you know what I'm saying? But I think for a Moana ride, I think I'd want the Shanghai Pirates ride system, like where you're actually sitting in a boat with real water. I don't know. I just feel like that would serve the story better, in my opinion. Googamp here says, now that Princess and the Frog finally has its own ride, what would it take for another underperforming Disney movie like Hercules, Atlantis, Treasure Planet to get their own ride? Well, not every Disney movie, even during the Walt Disney era, did well. You know what I'm saying? Like, for example, I don't believe Fantasia did well in the box office. And we got an entire nighttime spectacular, not directly based on Fantasia, but kind of. I mean, Fantasmic is kind of, So
Pinocchio actually didn't do so hot at the box office. It's a beloved classic.
Right.
It did well with the re-releases and the VHSs and the DVD sales, but the actual initial release of Pinocchio, it didn't do that hot. And yet the song is the anthem of the company, basically, When You Wish Upon a Star. And there is also a dark ride in Fantasyland at Disneyland.
Yeah, exactly. So they might. Treasure Planet, probably not, because that wasn't just underperforming. That's that's in the flop category. That's kind of like the Black Cauldron tier, kind of. Unfortunately, I love Treasure Planet. You know what I'm saying? It's a great movie.
Atlantis, I'd say the same. Actually, out of the three that was mentioned, probably, I mean, it's still a long shot, but I could see Hercules having one before the other two.
Absolutely. Because you still see love in the parks for Hercules. Like, even Wondrous Journeys, the fireworks show for the 100th at Disneyland had Hercules stuff. They still do Hercules. They're also going to have a Hercules live action show, if I'm not mistaken, from the Russo brothers, I think. So I think it's the Russo brothers, which is a weird.
I think so. Yeah.
Weird choice. We'll see if it works. But yeah, I think Hercules, you have the best chance. The other two, especially, I don't know, man. those are Atlantis and Treasure Planet, and especially Treasure Planet. They're just too known for being a flop. It's not even underperforming. It was really just a flop. Gugamp continues here. Is there any chance that Disney's more mature IP like Die Hard or Futurama could come to the parks? Die Hard, absolutely not. I don't think that's coming to the parks at all. And I don't think I'd want it in the parks, to be honest with you. Futurama, though, I could kind of see that, but not in a castle park. Like if you had a Futurama ride in Hollywoodland at DCA, or a Futurama ride, say at Disney Hollywood Studios, okay. Oh, George disagrees.
yeah, actually.
No, just a ride, not a land, just a ride.
Yeah, I still feel like that type of genre is kind of out of its element with the Disney parks. Now, again, I said that with Avatar, and it's absolutely breathtaking. But with Futurama and The Simpsons, and especially because we've seen it with The Simpsons over at Universal, I feel like they would do much better with obviously not a land, and I personally feel like not even just a standalone ride. I feel like if they intertwine them, sort of like with Slimer's idea with doing like a newer, updated, great movie ride, or ride the screen kind of thing, where they incorporate The Simpsons and Futurama into an eclectic IP format, I think it would work for me.
Yeah. And Gugamp here continues. Are there any rides you think have outgrown the IP they're attached to? And what IP would you like to replace them? That's interesting. So I think what he's trying to say here is, are there any rides where the ride is awesome, the ride itself has sort of transcended the IP that it's based on? That's a tough one, man. I don't really think so. I can't really think of any off the top of my head. I don't know, man. Yeah, I can't really think of any off the top of my head. I might have to revisit that one another time.
That's a very good question, though.
It's a very, very good question. It's interesting. Some people say, speaking of Pinocchio, some people say the Pinocchio dark ride at Disneyland.
I was actually going to say that. I mean, I personally love it. But I can see that if Disney was to update it or change it, I could see why.
Yeah. So that interesting question. Very interesting question. Gugamp here continues. When and if Universal loses The Simpsons, they're losing it. From what I understand, even like the Universal scoopers and fans, they're all saying they're hearing that Universal is going to opt out of that contract, or Disney's going to force them to opt out. One of the two. But they're not going to have it in a few years. Do you actually think there's a chance Disney will bring it to the parks? I don't know, man. Like, and this is the thing, we kind of talked about it with Futurama. Like, okay, I don't think let me start from the beginning. The Simpsons lands at Universal, I think, are pretty hideous. Okay, now before the Universal people get all mad at me, I don't think Disney would do any better. I honestly don't. I don't think anyone.
It's just how the IP works. It just doesn't fit in a theme park environment.
Yes, it's just that it's a great show, but that style of animation doesn't transcend well into the real world, in my opinion. So even Disney, I don't think it would look any better. Okay, so Universal did the best that they possibly could. Do I think there's any chance they'll bring it to the parks? As a land, I certainly hope not. And even like what you were asking earlier, Gugamp, Futurama, I don't want to see a Futurama land either. If they do an attraction where it's in its own little contained thing, maybe, but it's just, I don't know. There's something about that Matt Groening style of animation that just doesn't really work, in my opinion, in a theme park. There are certain environments that you watch on film that you go, wow, I want to go there. Pandora is one of them. Pandora is gorgeous, breathtaking. Even Radiator Springs, you know what I'm saying? That's awesome. I mean, the Cadillac Range and all that. That's something that you really want to visit. I never watched as a kid Simpsons and thought, wow, I really want to go there. It's a very flat 2D kind of environment. I don't see the appeal in my
That's
opinion.
Just like if they were to consider doing the same thing with Bob's Burgers because of Fox. Like I don't want to see a Bob's Burgers land. It's a great show. It's a funny show, but it's like I don't want to see a land about it, you know?
Yeah, I'm just not. Yeah, exactly. Laura Jonathan here says, what are your thoughts on the upcoming meeting with the state of Florida next week? Could it hint at a fifth park in 10, 20 years? What is this meeting next week, George? Have you heard of this?
Yes, actually, thanks for bringing this up, Lord Jonathan, because I was actually going to talk to you about this, of possibly doing a Citrus Corner on this. They announced that they were going to have a meeting, sort of kind of like how for Disneyland Forward, to kind of get that final approval from the state and the oversight district and what have you, and agreements to the terms and conditions. I believe it is next Wednesday. Do not quote me, but I think that's when it's supposed to be. And this even hit the local news station in Florida. And even the news station was hinting at the possibility that this could potentially, it's not guaranteed, of a fifth gate. And I thought that was very interesting, even though I personally think that it would kind of, as you say, OG, cannibalize the other parks, because there's so much more that they need to do with the other parks. But this could possibly be looking into the future, of a possibility of a fifth gate coming to Walt Disney World. And I was very surprised at that they even mentioned that on a local Florida news station.
Yeah, okay, here's the thing. That's exciting, but at the same time, I've said many times, I don't think Disney World needs a fifth gate right now. I think there's so many, I think it's already spread so thin over there at Walt Disney World, and you have so many issues with a lot of the parks. I mean, just about every single park needs stuff. Yeah. And then to add a fifth park into that equation, if they do that, it feels very reactionary to Universal. And I've said it before, you do not want to get in the game of being overly reactionary. We've seen this with DC and the MCU. When MCU was on their hot streak with the cinematic universe, DC wanted to just get in there, and they wanted to do Batman versus Superman, this, that, and the other. It's like, it's too reactionary. And Disney World is in a different place. It's a more of a mature resort. They don't need, Universal's in growth mode, market share growth mode. Another park for them makes sense. Another park for Disney World does not. Disney World should take that money and use it for new lands, new attractions, and the current parks that they have. And that's all they need to compete with that big universe.
And I definitely completely agree with you. I'm wondering, though, because they said this was going to be on the span of 20 years. So I'm wondering if the first 10 years they're going to utilize that to update the parks that they currently have. And then the second 10 years that could potentially lead down the road for a fifth gate. That I could see be more plausible.
Okay, that's fair.
But if they are considering right out of the gate fifth park, bar none, no, I think that's very detrimental to the resort, because as I said, you have, as much as I love Animal Kingdom, you love Animal Kingdom. I know how much you love
dude, yeah, love it.
I could just go in there and just walk around with the sights, sounds, smells, and everything. A typical family going on vacation doesn't want that when they spend their money, when they go to a Disney park, so they need to add more of what they have before they expand.
Yeah, exactly. That's a fair point, though. You're right. Maybe they're talking to Florida about another gate, but like you guys are saying, 10, 15, 20 years from now, that's a different story. It's kind of like Disneyland, right? I don't think we're going to get a third gate, in 5 years. No way. But it's the long game. You know what I'm saying? So
Can you imagine them announcing the third gate of Disneyland and the fifth gate of Walt Disney World at the exact same time?
at the expo, at D23?
Not at this D23, but just in general.
Oh, yeah.
Like if they both resorts get that announcement at the exact same time, where they both have that equal love.
Oh, that would bring the house down, dude. That would absolutely bring the house down, because I think fans want more of that stuff. But I just think right now, from a strategic standpoint,
no, it's not time.
Right.
Not at all.
Right. If I'm a diabetic, right, it sounds good. Oh, fuck, man. I want to have chocolate cake before I go to bed. Sounds good, right? Oh, man, that's the shit, dude. I'm going to have some chocolate cake. But you have to think about it well, how's that going to affect my blood sugar? Yeah. How's that going to, you know what I'm saying? You have to think about this stuff. So yes, even if you do decide to go for it and have that piece of chocolate cake, that's fine up front.
but in a sense, you're going to be paying for it later.
Exactly. So you got to be really strategic with that. It's a big investment. Yeah, you got to wait. Disney World right now, as we stand right now, does not need a fifth gate, not at all. But maybe in 20 years. Maybe once you get your A1C down, then you can have that chocolate cake. You know what I'm saying?
There you go.
Googam32, could and should Disney buy out the companies that built their Asian parks the same way they bought out the company that built Disneyland Paris? No, I don't. I don't think they should. OLC is doing a great job running Tokyo. I don't see why they would have to step in and buy that. I think they bought Paris because Paris was struggling like crazy. And
I think it's a different. Trying to think how to say this. I feel like I'm going to try to say this as respectful as I possibly can. I feel like the French government had a different outlook towards the Walt Disney Company when they built the park out there as opposed to the Asian parks. I felt like the Asian parks were a little bit more welcoming, and I feel like that they have a different beast of how they run things operation wise. And as OG said, Disneyland Paris, or before it was Euro Disney, it had a lot of issues going forth. So I feel like, especially with OLC, they run it well. I feel like the Asian parks with Shanghai and Hong Kong, I think they're doing well as fine. So if it's not broken, don't fix it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's also good to sort of have these countries involved. Like OLC is a Japanese company, right? Mm-hmm. So, and they cater to Japanese audience. I think that matters. You know what I'm saying? I think that's good. I think when Disney owns all of it, I don't know. Yeah, I don't like that idea. Yeah. Unfortunately, I just don't like that idea. I think that these other entities do very well. I think kind of doing those parks in those countries and then kind of leave it at that. And plus we get different products, right? Like for example, with Tokyo Disney, you get crazy stuff because that all they do, OLC, all they do are parks. So you get these crazy investments. Well, would you see these kind of crazy investments if Disney owned, OLC or owned, Tokyo Disneyland? Probably not, because now they have to factor in all their other stuff like they do here with the studio end and all the other elements of the Walt Disney Company. So I think by having them not own it, it opens it up to a little bit more of a different perspective, so to speak, and a different approach. I think that's healthy. Absolutely. Yeah. Lord Jonathan says here, could Anastasia and Thumbelina be added to parks one day? Honestly, Lord Jonathan, probably not. I mean, technically they're Disney now. I get it. I even think that Fern Gully is Disney now.
Yeah, because of Fox. Yeah.
Yeah. How long has it been since you heard Fern Gully? Huh? That's a long time ago.
Oh, that was a long time.
Yeah.
Man, take me back to 1992.
Yeah, exactly. But no, Lord Jonathan, I just think these properties, I don't know, man. They're pretty irrelevant in my opinion, and I just don't see it happening. Maybe they will. I don't know. I seriously doubt it, though. Very, very much seriously doubt it. Tough question from Matthew Murr, all the way from the UK. Do you think a film getting snubbed at the awards can be a blessing in disguise, like Once Upon a Studio was? I think it can be, because fans and creatives might feel more compelled to leap to its defense. So one of the biggest snubs, in my opinion, in Oscar history was when Beauty and the Beast got snubbed for Best Picture against Silence of the Lambs. I'll never forgive the Academy for doing that. That's my favorite Disney animated film. It's even better than a lot of the Walt Disney movies. I'll say it. I know it's probably not a popular thing to say, but I think it's the best animated film Disney has ever done, including the Walt stuff. Okay, that's my opinion. Yeah, and I feel like as a fan personally, I felt more compelled to defend Beauty and the Beast because it got snubbed. I wanted to go, like, I felt like, oh, that's messed up. So yeah, it absolutely can. What do you think, George?
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm completely on that snub train with Beauty and the Beast. I feel like that was the worst decision the Academy ever came to sought at that time, because it was the very first animated film that actually was in as a contender for Best Picture of the year with a lot of these other great films. And don't get me wrong, I think Silence of the Lambs is a great film. Yeah. Do I feel like that it should have won Best Picture of the year? Absolutely not. Even though despite it was filmed in locations around my area, my city of Pittsburgh. But no, Beauty and the Beast it will always be for me one of the most unique animated films, which, as I said, it's my favorite Disney animated film of all time. And I truly felt like it should have been honored with the achievements that it already had received at that time with that Best Picture nod, but should have been a win.
Yeah, I know it should have been. And it also pissed me off when the Academy after that decided we're going to create Best Animated Film category, right? Because it felt like to me,
a film is a film.
Right. A film is a film. And that decision to me felt like, well, man, animation's kind of getting a little too close to comfort here. So we got to create the kiddie table for the animation, kind of put it over there. You know, I hate that. You know, Beauty and the Beast is a good film, period. It doesn't matter if it's animated or not. Okay. Beauty and the Beast is better than a lot of live action movies, you know? So I just feel it was unnecessary to create a whole separate category for best animation. I don't know, man. It just, that whole thing has bothered me for years. Film is film, and just because you animate it doesn't make it any less of a film. Let it be in there with the other Best Picture nominations. And to be fair, the Academy does allow that sometimes, like with I think Up got a best. Yeah,
Up actually, Up. I think was kind of interesting with Up because that was nominated for both Best Picture and Best Animated feature film. So that was quite interesting.
Yeah. Deserving, though. Very deserving.
Yes.
Mr. Matthew Murr continues. When do you think Iger is most likely to announce his successor? I say end of this year at the earliest or mid-2025 at the latest. Yeah, mid-2025 is actually kind of cutting it close because he's going to retire in 2026. I'm guessing by the end of this year, we should know.
I'd say by the end of the year or the very beginning of 2025.
Yeah.
That for me would be the latest.
Yeah, exactly. And I hope they get creative with this decision, Matthew. Like we said earlier with the other question, I hope they figure something out where Disney works its best when it's a dual leadership role. You know what I'm saying? You had the Frank Wells Eisner dynamic. You had the Walton Roy dynamic. Tap into some of that energy with this. I don't want to see just Daddy Josh become CEO. I don't want to, even if Dana Walden, who I think is very capable, I still would want to see someone else kind of have equal or close to equal power to kind of offset her a little bit. I think that dynamic works really, really well at Disney. You know, if you had like a Dana Walden and a Tom Staggs, or a Tom Staggs and a Kevin Meyer, or a Dana Walden and a Josh D'Amaro, that kind of dynamic I think would be the most successful. So we'll see. I hope they get really creative with that. I hope they don't just go the boring route. If they just put Josh D'Amaro in there, I'm going to be really disappointed, man. Really disappointed. Like I said, like I outlined earlier on the show, there's a lot of reasons why I don't feel like he should get the spot. At least the spot as him only. If he's with another person, like a studio person or something, then okay, fine.
And honestly, I would then look at Iger and say, then I would start questioning his capability of how he can make decisions. Because it's like we went through all this the first time and look at the dung heap that we got from it. That you had to actually come back and try to revitalize the company, and you're going to put us in this position again. And I don't think Iger is going to want to jeopardize his reputation, especially since, and I know we said it many times, he left, he came back, I'm going for retirement and everything. But this is truly going to be his last round.
Yeah.
And I feel like he knew that he screwed up the first time by jumping the ship and putting Chapek at the helm. He's not going to do it because he's not going to want to come back after this. So he has to make sure he solidifies the right person or persons for the job before he leaves.
Yeah, well said. CSRS here says, for a Hollywoodland replacement, would it still be possible to move the monorail beam behind the land, or would it likely to stay where it is? I think it's likely going to stay where it is, CSRS. I think that if they're going to replace Hollywoodland, they're going to replace Hollywoodland with another urban environment. So, and that would kind of create the situation where they wouldn't have to move the beam, right? So if you put Pandora there, right? Like that's the rumor. They're going to put Pandora there. Then you have to figure out the beam. But if you put Zootopia there, the monorail beam makes more sense in that setting. So that's why I think they're going to go more in the Zootopia direction, something like that. So they don't have to move the beam. They can justify it in the land. So, and then Pandora would be saved for the Symbol lot. I don't know, but yeah, I mean, they technically could. I mean, they can move the monorail beam and they could do all kinds of stuff with it, but I just don't. I think it's unlikely. I think they're just going to create a land that just fits
around
with the
it.
beam. Yeah, around the beam. Yeah, exactly. Now, this question, honestly, CSRS, I'm not 100% certain because I honestly haven't been following Avengers 5 too much. Well, we'd have to get on here with Tones from Bad Thoughts and kind of discuss this, but CSRS is asking, when do you think Disney will announce if they are starting production on Avengers 5? I'm not sure about that, honestly. Again, I haven't really been following it. Have you been following this, George?
Not really. I mean, not since they, they halted production on it, and it's been going through a lot of transitions of the direction of how they want Avengers 5. But that's more so all I know about it. They haven't really made any announcements. They may make the announcement at D23 as far as the studio panel. They may be holding out on that.
Yeah, well said, well said. Matthew Murr, all the way from the UK. Do you think the Disney fan base will eventually warm up to Wish like it did Atlantis and Treasure Planet? Absolutely. Absolutely. This is a typical, it's very cyclical with this stuff. You know what I'm saying? It becomes kind of like the cool thing to like the underdog eventually. Like right now we're in it, so it's like, oh man, that movie sucks, yada yada yada. Just like the Star Wars prequels, I was old enough to remember those prequels. Star Wars fans hated the prequels, hated them. Now, years later, decades later, fans love it. They look back with a lot of nostalgia for the prequels. So eventually Wish will become, yes, like an Atlantis or a Treasure Planet where they look back and go, yeah, you know what? That was a good movie. We like Wish, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, absolutely. CSRS, why do you think Disney takes longer to build than Universal? Does this annoy you? Why can't Disney step up the construction timelines? It's strategic. I think they number one, I think they want to spread out the investment over multiple fiscal periods. That's a big part of it. Number two, they're trying to figure out when to open certain attractions, on when they're going to get the biggest boost. You know what I'm saying? So I think those two things are at play here. Does it annoy me? Not at all. Honestly, CSRS, what annoys me more is when I see a lot of fans harping on that, like build it faster. I don't really care about that. If it's being constructed and I know I'm going to get it, whether it opens in 2025 or 2026, I could care less, dude. And I'm the same way with movies. People get so wrapped up in like opening dates, like when's this movie going to come out? When's that movie going to come out? Oh, it was delayed. Oh my God. Couldn't care less. I honestly couldn't care less. The movie comes out when it comes out. The land, the attraction comes out when it comes out. I don't really care about timelines. Just if it's being built, I'm going to get it eventually. I'm in no rush, and I don't really care either way, to be honest. And I know I'm in the minority with this because fans get all worked up over the timelines. Universal's building stuff, and why can't Disney build things as fast as Universal? I honestly couldn't care less. They delayed the opening of the Rivers of America and the Disneyland Railroad when they were reconfiguring that whole thing. They delayed it. During that whole construction period for when they were building Galaxy's Edge, they delayed it. Years later, did it matter that it was delayed? At a certain, seriously, years later, does it matter that they delayed the timeline for the railroad? No, it didn't matter at all. Once the thing opens, it's irrelevant and it doesn't matter at all. It's a moot point. So in my opinion, if it opens in 2025, 2027, whatever, it's going to open eventually. And once it does open, the delay didn't matter at all. So that's kind of where I stand with it. But I do understand, CSRS, that I'm in the minority because a lot of fans get upset over it. What do you think, George?
So 2 points I have to make to this. Well, first off, I have to say, yes, I do agree with you. I'm kind of like an ebb and flow kind of person where it's like, I don't need to have it on a specific date and what have you. However, I will say that I feel like Disney stretches it a little bit too long. I feel like, and I understand like in the very beginning, but for the stronger leg life of the construction for Tron, I thought was absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah,
for me, it was a coaster at the end of the day. There was nothing immersive really about it. The ride's not that long. I do enjoy Tron, but I feel like after riding it and I'm thinking this really took 6 years to build. Like that's the equivalence of building an entire land with multiple attractions. Second of all, the reason why I have that is because I'm not getting any younger here. So the longer Disney stretches this shit out, the longer I have to wait, and my time clock is ticking here. You know, so it's like as I get older and I get more bent and frailed, I'm not going to be able to enjoy these attractions. So I want to enjoy them while I'm in my youth here, and I don't want to take 10 years for one attraction.
Yeah. And I do notice too, when it comes to Walt Disney World, they tend to drag their feet more than Disneyland, because Runaway Railway here at Disneyland didn't take that long. I mean, they built it right through the pandemic, or through a lot of the pandemic. It didn't take forever, and they had to bulldoze, backstage to do it and build it. For some reason though, in Disney World, like with Tron, you compare the Tron timeline to that of like Runaway Railway at Disneyland, it's like night and day. And Tron, like you said, was just a coaster. It is kind of weird. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. So for me, time is precious. So Disney, get up off your ass, cut the bullshit, and let's get going. Time is money.
Exactly. We'll take two more questions, then we're gonna skedaddle. CSRS here says, how likely do you think it'll be Paramount gets bought by Skydance than Sony on top of it? I don't know. I think it's gonna be, in my opinion, I think it's gonna be Sony that gets it, but I could be wrong. What do you think, George?
Yeah, I can possibly. Have we even seen anything come out from Skydance?
I haven't heard anything lately from that. I think, from what I understand, I think Sony is still in the top contender for that. I gotta look into it, but yeah, I don't think Skydance is getting it. I think Sony is the lead contender right now. You Googling? You're checking it out?
Yeah, I'm checking.
Yeah, let me know, because I haven't heard. I mean, ever since I haven't heard an update for like a month. So, is there anything in there that says anything about?
I'm not seeing anything.
Yeah, it's gonna get bought up. CSRS.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be Sony though.
Yeah, I'm feeling it's gonna be Sony. It's gonna get bought up by somebody, but I think Sony's probably the top of the list right now. Last and final question from Mr. Matt.
Actually, if we could do one more after Matthew said that CSRS, the Zootopia one.
Sure. Matthew Murr here says, a question for OG. Do you think anything might compel Disney to alter its DAS, its special disability assistance passes guidelines once again? Absolutely. And they should. This is something that shouldn't be etched in stone forever, and that's it. You know what I'm saying? When you have stuff like this, you need to kind of adapt. They're gonna have to kind of see what works and what doesn't, and if something doesn't work, then you go ahead and change it. You don't want to be super rigid with this, or this is the rules and this is never going to change. No, yeah, they probably will alter it, and they should alter it. You know what I'm saying? They should constantly evolve these things and constantly revisit this stuff. Now, I do think, in my opinion, there were two reasons why they altered it in the first place. Number one, people were abusing the system. Okay, there are people with legitimate disabilities that need those passes and need that assistance, but there were a lot of people that were using it to bypass the Genie Plus and all that stuff, and that's wrong. It is absolutely wrong. So I think that they got tired of that abuse. Also, we can't sugarcoat it. Disney's in the business of making money, and if there's a bunch of people using DAS to bypass their paid service, they're going to be at issue with that on a financial end of it. So I think those are the two reasons why they altered it in the first place. But yeah, in short, Matthew, they should absolutely keep revisiting DAS and altering it when appropriate. You know what I'm saying? You constantly want to do better as you go. You don't want to just be super rigid and this is it and these are the rules forever. What do you think, George?
Yeah, I definitely feel that, yes, there have been a lot of people abusing the system. Definitely. I understand that. I feel like Disney's brought to their attention to actually do something about it was more so because it was hindering on the purchases for Genie Plus. Right. Essentially, they're losing money, so they had to look into it. I do feel like that they do need to make some adjustments to it big time, because yes, this DAS system is for people who are truly, who have disabled, handicap, ailments, and what have you. And right now, there are some people that can't even get the DAS who really do have legitimate ailments. So they did this for the purpose to help those people, but now they're getting the short end of the stick because Disney is more focused on, oh, we got to get the Genie Plus purchases back up. Yeah. So there's a lot of weighing and balancing of do what's right to kind of keep the people that shouldn't be doing what they're doing, but also still helping the people who do need it, and also for the Genie Plus sales to go up so Disney can continue to make revenue on it.
Yep, well said. CSRS, final question. Like I said, we do have a hard out today, so I do apologize. But if your question didn't get answered today, hang on to that. We're gonna have another live show very, very soon. CSRS says, if Zootopia got brought to DCA or Hollywood Studios, would it be the one ride like Shanghai, or would they have an additional second ride? And if they did, what could it be? In my opinion, it might be a similar ride system. Maybe they'll use that Rise of the Resistance, Mickey and Minnie's ride system, but I think it might be different because there is a Zootopia 2 coming out. And I would imagine that Disney's going to want to utilize some story beats, maybe some elements from the new movie. So I think it will be different to some degree.
I agree. And I also feel like they would bank on a second attraction for that land based off of Zootopia 2, whatever we're going to get. Because I think, as our friend Kaylee says, I think that's going to be a banger of a film, because I do enjoy Zootopia. And I think the land over in Shanghai looks phenomenal.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. That would be a great addition to DCA, I think. Really great addition to DCA. If you replace Hollywood Land with Zootopia, and then you add some, and I've said this so many times, but not everyone watches every video, but if you add some Los Angeles landmarks and kind of Zootopia-fy them in that land, I think you can have enough connective tissue to California. I think it'd be fine. And you can keep the trolley then, the red car trolley, and you can keep the monorail beam where it is. So you're good to go. Now, before we head out of here, I do want to say we are aware of the Tiana Bayou Adventure ride through. George and I did watch it this morning. I liked a lot of it. There were some things I didn't like about it as well. So exactly what I thought would happen with just about every ride. But this one is no different. But we will be doing a full breakdown this weekend, probably tomorrow, of Tiana's Bayou Adventure. So stay tuned for that. But George, if you could remind everybody where they could find you on social media, sir.
Absolutely. You can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Disney George. You could also find me on Instagram under the Disney Italiano. And of course, you can find me right here on my home base in Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner, with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info. And I just have to say really quick, because we didn't get through to all the questions, but I have seen that there were some newcomers who came in. So I just want to give a quick shout out to Kiki and Luca, Ann Grimm, Starship, T.S. Wade, Girly Nerd, Girl Power Coasters, Undead Nerd. So we appreciate Candid Camper. So I just wanted to give you guys a shout out. I know that we didn't get to any of your questions or anything. This was kind of a little bit of a beta tester. This was our very first morning live show. So if you all enjoyed it, we will definitely be considering on doing them into the future. And it probably would be during the weekend, so that everyone who can join has a better opportunity in doing so.
Yeah, this is our very first morning show, basically, So, and we had a good turnout, I'm saying? You guys came through in the morning. So yeah, we'll definitely do another morning live show. And like George said, probably on the weekends, because I know everyone, weekdays are kind of tough with work and everything. But I want to thank everybody for joining us today on this weekend edition of OG55. I hope you all have an amazing weekend. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay Disney, as George says, right? And thank you all so much for watching this episode of OG55.
Like Ice T, I'm OG. Like Ice T, I'm OG. Ice T, I'm OG. I'm demon like IT. Got more juice than High C.